I'm going to mute myself. All right, I'm always eating. Okay, I'll stop talking about that. Thanks, Brian. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Hi, my name is Amanda Alshouse. I'm the president of the CPUN board. I'll be leading tonight's meeting. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been an emotional afternoon for me, and perhaps many of you as well. This afternoon in Minneapolis, the jury's conviction on 3 counts for the murder of George Floyd kind of shook things here a bit. I'm mentioning this because it was during it was after his murder back in May of last year that the community's reaction resulted in CPUN's major work over last summer with the community name change. The community felt compelled to achieve change locally, and then the community worked together to find a new name in the process that we as a board facilitated, and then the community adopted a new name. So perhaps in today's verdict, we can see some evidence that there's more opportunity for modification and policy and procedure changes across the country to keep people safer and to improve relationships between police departments and the people who live in the communities that the departments support. I see evidence around all of the uncertainty that we felt coming into today that there's still a lot of challenges faced by people who are living in this country while Black. And in the context of institutional racism and the history of racism in our country. And so I just want to say it again, Black Lives Matter, and I'm happy that the jury in Minnesota said that today as well. So my condolences to anyone who has a personal connection to all of this. I'm talking about it in abstract, but this was a real person who died in the process of this. And so I'm sorry if you have a connection there. I'm also going to extend condolences to anyone who has a connection to Columbine, which was 22 years ago today, the tragic shooting in that high school. Related to this, anyone who's a gun owner in the community should know that yesterday POLA signed into legislation two laws, one requiring safe storage of guns in households with minors, the other requiring owners to report within 5 days if their weapons are stolen or lost. So thanks for listening to that. And so now I'll just drop into normal material here. So CPUN is a registered neighborhood organization for the Central Park community. CPUN's first meeting was 17 years ago this month in 2002 in a pocket park. We've been meeting virtually for the past year. We met in the Central Park Recreation Center for a number of years before that, and before that in the MCA's meeting room on Roslyn. I don't know yet when we'll be back to meeting in person, but certainly not for a few more months because the rec center will be closed at least that long. CPUN is a volunteer board. Most of us have day jobs. Mine is working in women's health research. The purpose of CPUN is to provide a working forum for the residents of the neighborhood to participate in pursuing the vision of the neighborhood by fostering, creating and developing a vibrant urban community dedicated to social equity, environmental responsibility, and economic opportunity. We're a vehicle for public service. We seek to promote civic discourse through in-person, under normal circumstances, meetings and conversations. Then we hope to achieve an environment where people are more likely to act on each other's behalf, act and intervene, and to support each other. So the agenda for today has 3 parts. The first 2 parts are in the first hour of the meeting, and the last part is the second hour of the board meeting. The first 2 parts, first updates from community partners. And I see that we have Commander Fountain on the meeting, and Lieutenant Hines and Officer Jenkins are here from Denver Police Department. And then we have a featured speaker from the Denver DA, the Denver District Attorney's Office. Deputy DA Tim Hoffman is here. And so sometimes with our community updates in the beginning, we hear from the library. And I know from talking to Lily Kosmiski, the librarian, who's she's taking a position in a different library for a while staffing issues are worked out with libraries coming back online. So she's not going to be joining us today or for a little while. I see Amanda Schultz here from Councilman Chris Herndon's office. We'll check in with her after we hear from Denver Police Department. And I did hear from Eric Herbst from Northeast Transportation Connections. and he will not be able to join us tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to the police department, and I don't know who's, okay, Lieutenant Hines is raising his hand. So Lieutenant Hines.
Hey, good evening. Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate you having us in the meeting again. Can you guys hear me okay? I just want to make sure before I go. Okay, perfect. You know, we always have to do that little Zoom check here. So before I dive into anything, I'll just introduce you guys. For any of you I haven't met, I'm Kevin Hines. I am the Sector 1 Lieutenant in District 5, which means I'm responsible for police precincts 511 and 512, which is basically the Central Park neighborhoods. I'm joined tonight by Officer Kiera Jenkins, who is our community resource officer for that same area, and then Commander Marcus Fontaine is joining us tonight. So just to run you through a few of the updates, I've been asked about crime trends in the area lately. Our crime trends have been tracking pretty similar to a lot of the trends we're seeing in the rest of the metro area, but on a precinct to precinct basis, precinct 511, year to date, violent crime is down 37.5% and has been flat for about the last 28 days. Property crime in precinct 511 is up 65.1% year to date, but is also down 16% in the last 28 days. Most of that crime is being driven by auto thefts and theft from motor vehicle incidents. As I talked to you guys about at the last meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, we have seen a significant rise in catalytic converter thefts just due to the precious metals that are contained in catalytic converters. They've become a valuable item for thieves to target, and certain vehicles are more likely to be targeted for those. We have a list we could provide you with if any of you would like that. Looking at precinct 512, violent crime's up 27.9% year to date, but it's down 26.1% in the last 28 days. That's been driven primarily by aggravated assault firearms cases. As we delve into those issues, most of those are unrelated cases. We've had, a handful of cases in total, but we had a road rage, a DV incident, some acquaintances that got into disputes. So nothing that constitutes a crime pattern that the larger community should be worried about being victimized in, but still a concern that we're seeing those events taking place at all. Property crime in precinct 512 is up 46.9% year to date, but it is down 18% in the last 28 days. So as you're probably hearing throughout the theme here, we've been making some strides in the last month. Once again, in precinct 512, that property crime index is being driven by auto thefts, criminal mischief to vehicles, and burglary cases. Those criminal mischief to vehicle cases, some of the catalytic converter cases, or a lot of those, had been catted that way. So that's part of the reason you're seeing the rise in those cases. One thing I did want to bring up in terms of community response we're doing lately to try to target some of the violent crime issues with guns. And Amanda, it's convenient timing that you mentioned the two new pieces of legislation that were signed. Is we have started a gun safety campaign out here in District 5 that has several parts. Part of it's an educational campaign that we're trying to encourage people to make better decisions about how they store their firearms. For example, we've had 25 guns stolen in the district so far this year out of vehicles. So one of the messages we're trying to push is that cars make really bad gun safes. If you have a gun, don't keep it in your car. It's just a bad idea. We've also partnered with Project Child Safe to obtain some gun locks that we can give to residents. If you're a local gun owner and you don't have a lock for your firearms or need one, please let us know and we'll get you a firearms lock for your gun so that you can store it more safely. We've already given out 100 guns and the gun locks, not guns, we're not giving away guns right now, but we've given out 100, excuse me, I misspoke there. We have given out 100 gun locks during 2 campaigns that we've run in the last month. And that also kind of flows into an operation that we started called Operation Keep 2 Casings. This operation was something we developed over the last year after learning about a similar program that the Wichita Police Department was implementing and that they had had some great success with. Basically, this is kind of to aid us in developing a forensic trail on guns that are stolen. We're asking that gun owners, the next time you go to the range, if you own a gun, collect 2 spent casings from your firearm and put them in an envelope that we'll provide you with, where you can write down the make, model, and serial number of your firearm. In the event that you're victimized in the future and have your firearm stolen, you can provide those casings to the police department, which aids us in starting a NIBIN string, basically a ballistic database string on that firearm, so that if it is used in a crime or anything like that, we can more readily track where it came from, possibly identify leads on suspects, and potentially get the gun back to the owner more easily. We have pamphlets available on that, and we'll be doing some events throughout the district where we can give out some information on that. But that's just kind of the quick and dirty overview of the gun safety campaign that we're launching. But the overall goal here is we want to reduce crimes involving firearms and violence in the district. We think this is a way to help do that. While I'm here, before I move on, Amanda, I know you sent me some questions from the community, and I received a couple of other questions this week. And I just wanted to address some issues that had come up that I'd been asked about regarding crimes that have been occurring. First issue was a fence that was lit on fire in the neighborhoods. That incident's actually investigated by fire investigators. We have arson investigators that look into any of those intentional fire cases. We talked to them this morning. They don't have any immediate leads available on that incident. Another one, and Jeff, we were talking about that right before the meeting, was a burglary aggravated assault that occurred out in the Eastbridge neighborhood this week. It was a pretty scary situation. A homeowner was at home when somebody broke into their home. He confronted the suspect with a baseball bat, and as many of you have heard, the suspect took control of that baseball bat and injured the homeowner. Responding officers did locate that suspect and arrest him, so he is in custody. Wouldn't worry about a further threat to the community on that one. He has been identified and arrested, and we're very confident we have the right person in that case. Another question that's come up several times today was an incident that occurred near Central Park Boulevard and 35th Avenue. Yesterday, it resulted in Swigert School being put on lockdown. There's been a lot of rumors about what that case was. I've heard everything from carjackings to gang stuff. That was actually, I won't go into a ton of details here, but it was an operation that another police district in Denver was involved in, and it just kind of came into our district. So it wasn't something that happened locally here. It was just something that District 2 was dealing with that ended up over here. No further threat to the community out of that incident. And in happier news, I would like to report that we finally caught the suspect in the ongoing pattern of screws being thrown in the road out on 35th. I know that's impacted several of you, including Amanda. I believe you had a couple of flat tires from that as well. We do have a suspect that was arrested for that. He lives nearby. He's been charged with a felony charge in reference to 4 of those incidents. And the investigation is still ongoing to see if we can positively link him to the other cases. I mean, obviously our assumption is that he was involved in the other incidents we've had out there in the last couple of months, but you know, just seeing if we can acquire the proof necessary to charge those additional cases as well. Before I move on to see if anybody has any questions here, I think Kiera was going to offer some updates on some of the upcoming events and meetings we had, if you're on, Kiera.
Hello, how are you guys? So the only thing I have to add is just a few upcoming events we have. May 20th, we'll be having the next commanders meeting. I will throw the link in the chat. And then coming up in June, that first week of June, the 3rd, we will be doing a neighborhood watch ice cream social. More information on that to come.
And Commander Fontaine, I don't know if you had anything to add on there, or if anybody has any questions for me. I'm happy to answer.
Just briefly, you know, it's nice to see everybody at the meeting. I think one of the good things that came out of COVID is I've noticed that a a lot of these meetings that there are a lot more attendees. I think it's just a matter of it being so much more convenient for folks to be able to pop on and attend these. So that's a good thing. So as far as the commanders meetings go, we'll be trying to somehow keep this incorporated so we can make it a little more convenient for folks to come to the commanders meeting, which I encourage all of you to do. At the commanders meeting, we will talk about the issues in this sector, in addition to the issues that are occurring in the rest of the district. The other thing about the commanders meeting, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, is the fact that you guys can ask questions about anything. And I'm pretty much open to talk about any of those hard things that you might want to ask the police that you might feel a little bit weird about asking. And so at the commanders meeting, I encourage people to ask those questions. And I appreciate some of the things that Amanda said at the beginning of the meeting. And I think one of the most important things she touched on, and I've actually talked about this a little bit back at the FBI National Academy, was the idea of us looking at our history. The police have to look at our history, like really look at it as it relates to our relationship with the citizenry, particularly the African-American community, and the community at large also needs to really take a look at the nation's history so that we can understand some of these issues better. The history is there to be seen and it's there to be learned, but many people, including people in my business, they don't take the time to go back and look and really understand those linkages that happen all the way back from the beginning, all the way up until now. You can see the parallels if you just look. So I appreciate Amanda bringing up the history. It's very important. Before we can move forward, everybody needs to understand that a little bit better. But anyway, unless you guys have questions for me in particular, you can ask Lieutenant Hines, but I just wanted to say that, and I hope to see at least some of you at the commanders meeting next month.
I do have a quick question. Thank you for those words, by the way. Just as the community has expanded, or is it just with the census numbers coming out from 2020, when will police districts be redrawn to, it's not as like a reaction to the community growing, but, we've doubled. We as a community that has grown and grown and grown, and with 500 more homes proposed besides Central Park Boulevard, how are the routes, and how is staffing, and how is all of that able to be responsive to the growth rate of this community, and how often is that reevaluated?
Yeah, generally what drives redistricting is generally our call load numbers and the geographical areas. We don't like have a set schedule or anything that says, every 10 years we're going to revisit this. It's driven by numbers, and you're right, particularly out here in the far Northeast, it is growing by leaps and bounds. And I can guarantee you that we are always in downtown's ear talking about the population growth out here and the idea that we could use more officers out here. Always. I mean, all anybody has to do is take a drive up Quebec or take a drive up Central Park and up by that stadium in Adams County there, and then just shoot east all the way across, and it is growing hugely out there. So I would imagine, in a few years, like I said, when the call loads begin to change and the volumes begin to change, the analysts in the department will begin to talk about redistricting. But that's what generally drives that, the call load numbers and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
And Amanda, if I could add one more thing on there, because when issues of staffing come up like that, one thing I've been asked a number of times at community meetings is if our station is located in the right spot in the district. And I just want to remind everyone that as police officers, we're out there on patrol. We're not responding from the station. We don't have what I call the firehouse model. We're out there in the community. So even if the station's located over here off of Peoria, we still have officers assigned to Green Valley Ranch and Central Park and the other neighborhoods. So our officers can be out there and be responsive. But I've had that question come up a couple times so far this year as well, just to clarify that if anybody was wondering how we do that.
Thanks. Something that hasn't come up today is the racing, the drag racing. Is there anything that's different about that situation?
Yeah, you know, I could,
Well, oh,
you know, Kevin, if I may, I have an after action report here
Yeah.
from the last one. So we definitely hear all of the complaints about the racing. We hear that all over the district and certainly in Central Park neighborhood in Northfield. And I'm sure that Lieutenant Hines has probably told you in the past that we have operations that we do, and we do them actually citywide. Normally, we get districts 1, 3, and 5, our police districts, and we work with other agencies like State Patrol and sometimes some of the other districts or the other cities outside of Denver. And we work joint operations, and we actually did one just this past Sunday. I'm sure Lieutenant Hines has told you that these racing groups tend to move around. So they put their information out on social media, and in real time, the groups will say, hey, we're going to go over here and we're going to do this, and we're going to go over here and we're going to do that. So now we monitor those, and now we have crews of officers that race to those scenes, try to get there before them, to scare them off at least before they get started, and cite and arrest when we can. So to give you an example, just this past Sunday, we had our citywide enforcement team, districts 1, 3, 5, and our traffic unit. We had up a couple of helicopters, copter from CSP and Denver's copter, and they did operations. These people went to, give you some locations. So they had meetups at 505 South Broadway, 1111 East 53rd Avenue, 9401 East 48th out here, 700 Water downtown, 8585 West Bellevue down in Southwest Denver, Northfield Shopping Center up here, 38th in Quebec, in the same area around here. We chased these folks around, and just give you a few things that they did. They arrested one person for eluding arrest, put state charges on 6 people for different charges such as driving under suspension, violation of instruction permit for youngsters, no driver's license, misuse of plates, things like that. Additionally, we cited 6 people for municipal traffic charges, trespass charges, because we have those agreements like with the aquarium and the parking lot, just like we have agreements out here in District 5 with certain parking lot owners where we can write trespass. We wrote trespass tickets and expired plates. So let's see, 5 trespass tickets. We wrote, looks like we got about, actually we had 10 of those. And then we issued a couple of warnings. So 6 state charges, 1 eluding arrest, 10 municipal traffic charges and trespass charges and that sort of thing. We had 200 plus vehicles at 5 of those locations that I mentioned. So, like I said, we know that we are starting to affect things because we actually pick them up on social media when they say that they want to shut down because the police are everywhere and they're starting to cite everybody. So we hear the complaints, we're out there trying to get after it, and it looks like we are seeing some considerable success because sometimes those numbers look like they're dwindling a little bit. I remember a few months ago, we've had some pretty big gatherings out there with many more than 200 vehicles. So we're starting to make a dent, and we're trying to arrest as many people as we can when we have the probable cause to do so.
Great.
And we'll continue to do that. But we encourage everybody to keep calling and letting us know when these things are happening, so we can, that'll help us pinpoint where we need to be and how we need to respond to this.
All right, thank you so much. That's really nice to hear that update, because that's been a big focus of a lot of our previous conversations. Thank you so much for being here tonight. So I'm going to, Jeff.
Sorry, Amanda, I just saw that Gina had a question that was in chat we may have overlooked.
Yeah, I was actually just typing up a reply to that, but I'll just say it here. So yeah, we do work with the scrap yards where we can to identify who's dropped off catalytic converters and things like that. That's actually one of the reasons when I discussed catalytic converters in more depth last month, I was mentioning that putting something like your VIN number, having that imprinted on the catalytic converter can aid us in catching these folks, because that's an identifying serial number on there that we can use to trace that crime. Unfortunately, those devices don't normally have a VIN number printed on them. But we do work with the scrap yards to identify who's dropping them off and things like that. The problem's obviously proving that it happened in the course of a crime rather than somebody parting out a vehicle or something to that effect.
And Lieutenant Commander, I had a follow-up question on a comment you made earlier regarding aggravated assaults and firearms. You indicated that there has been an increase thus far this year. I'm wondering if you compare year to date so far with our totals from last year, what those figures are looking like right now.
I'm sorry, you're asking about year-to-date figures?
Yes, sir. With how many?
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, is year-to-date figures were up for the year compared to last year. And, you know, and one thing I'll mention about last year is we've seen a lot of metrics go up this year. But if you consider the time period we were in about this time last year, we had a lot of the world locked down. And some of these crimes that we normally saw took a little bit of a dip around then. I can't say that any single factor drove that up like that, but it is one of those things I think could be playing a role in some of the increases we're seeing right now compared to previous year's data.
Do you have figures for how many aggravated assault firearms we've had thus far this year?
Hang on a moment.
If my notes here are correct, we had 3 last year, and I'm just curious to know how many we had this year.
Last year in precinct 511 year to date, or I'm sorry, maybe that's not the average for the prior 3 years is that we have 5 in precinct 511, and we're even on that this year. Precinct 512 is where we saw a little bit of an increase. And in precinct 512, we have an average of 4 over the 3-year year-to-date average, and we're at 11 right now.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions I can help anybody with?
Thank you so much. I think if any other questions come up, go ahead and put those in the chat, please. And if and we can either, if members from representatives of the police department are still on, they can respond, or we can follow up with them later on. So I'll just check in with our other community partners quickly. Amanda
Thank you, Amanda.
Schultz. Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I just have one quick announcement, and that is the mulch giveaway and compost sale is coming up. So if you put your Christmas tree out at the end of the season, it has been turned into mulch. And one of the pickup locations is the Havana Nursery. So again, that's May 1st. It's 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you can go over and get some free mulch from the city while you're getting your garden ready for spring.
It smells like piney fresh over there. I was walking on Sand Creek the other day and it was delightful. Thank you. Are there any other community partner updates? I have one from Bluff Lake Apartments. We're working on a new arrangement where we had a very successful partnership with them around the holidays this past December, and I would like to see that extend throughout the year. And so we're working with their coordinator on site to determine what their needs are every month. And starting in May, there's going to be a flyer that'll have more information. But May, June, and July, she's suggested a monthly volunteer activity. In May, it's creating bags for kids to help them ease into summertime when they're home from school. June, it'll be pick up around the 2 locations that Mercy Housing manages in the Central Park community, Bluff Lake Apartments and Parkside over by 29th Avenue Town Center. And then July, there will be a walk that people can take together. So, and then a day of playing games. So watch out for more information about that. We're also at the community forum next month. So it's this time on the third Tuesday, but it'll be a much bigger meeting, and someone from Mercy Housing will be featured describing the new situation that we'll have with a partnership with CPUN. And then, and an ongoing donation drive. So volunteering, those are the things I just mentioned, and then a donation drive. And so in the context of this, by the way, is that Mercy Housing is income qualified rental homes. And so these are people who are living, who qualified because of their income to live in these two facilities. And then there's a site coordinator for the Bluff Lake site. And so that's who I've been talking to. And then the donation drive, again, we'll have more information about what the needs are. But I think the ballpark type of items will be things that you can't qualify to buy with WIC, but like need on a regular basis, like toilet paper or toothpaste, that sort of thing. But we'll come back with more information and drop off times and dates, but just be on the lookout for that to be coming. All right, is there anyone else who's on the call that would like to say hi or introduce themselves before we go to our featured speaker? All right, I will turn it over to you, Timothy Hoffman. Welcome, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Tim Hoffman. I'm a prosecutor with the Denver District Attorney's Office. Thank you guys for having me tonight. I know these meetings are always jam-packed with a bunch of agenda items, so I appreciate a few minutes of your time to talk. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the verdict in the George Floyd case today. As Amanda already pointed out, while it was a just verdict, the hope in these kind of cases is that it doesn't happen in the first place. Even though the officer was convicted today, there's still a family who's grieving, and there's no amount of jail or other things that we can do in the criminal justice system that brings back a loved one. So that segues nicely into part of why I'm here. My boss, Beth McCann, was initially elected in 2016. She was reelected in 2020. One of the big initiatives that she has been pushing, even before the pandemic and even before the murder of George Floyd, was having prosecutors come out into the community, come to these meetings, to talk to you guys, explain a little bit about what our office does. And then also the most important part from my perspective is to hear comments and feedback that you guys have. The first thing I do after these meetings is I send Beth McCann an email letting her know, here are the issues and concerns that the citizens wanted you to be aware of, and here's the questions they had. And she takes those emails to heart, and it's important that that we have these open lines of communications, as the commander already mentioned. This last year, as a prosecutor in the district attorney's office, between the twin issues of the COVID-19 pandemic and then all of the movements around the criminal justice reform, has really shed a light onto prosecutors generally and the role they play in the criminal justice system, and some of the things that our office can do to address over-policing, over-incarceration, and all of those related issues. So for those who aren't necessarily aware of what a district attorney's office does, we handle all of the criminal matters that take place in the city and county of Denver that are either misdemeanors or felonies. So we handle about 12,000 misdemeanor cases a year. That's anything from driving under the influence cases up to and including assaults, and some lower level sex assault crimes. Felonies, we have about 8,000 felony cases a year. That's your motor vehicle thefts, robberies, to and including your homicide cases. There's approximately 90 prosecutors in the office, and then a much larger number of support staff who work in the office every day. The primary goal, as is the Denver Police Department, is community safety and public safety. And I think that what we've seen in the past year plus with questions and proposals around community justice and some of the racial justice movements that we've seen is a shift in the understanding of what public safety looks like and what community safety looks like. I think that if you talk to most police officers, most judges, most prosecutors, they would tell you that there is a majority, I can't put percentages on it, but there are a fair number of people who fall into the criminal justice system because other facets and other areas of society have failed, right? So when public housing and public education and public health and all of these other things have not been able to help someone, they usually, as a last resort, end up in the criminal justice system. So a lot of the people that we prosecute are not hardened criminals. They are not career criminals. They are people who have mental health issues. They're people who have addiction issues. They're people who have fallen on tough economic times. And so Beth McCann and the office generally have been exploring ways that we can divert those people from the criminal justice system entirely, or if it's a case that still needs to be prosecuted in some manner, figuring out ways that are going to be more successful and smarter than simply locking them up for some period of time. The studies out there about even what a 30-day jail sentence does to someone's life are fairly overwhelming in terms of the adverse effects it has on someone's life. They can lose their job, their housing, custody of their children, things like that. And if we aren't providing resources for those individuals to address whatever issues led them to commit the crime in the first place, they're going to get released. And as I think both the Denver police officers on the call can attest, you'll see them back doing the same type of activity weeks, months after they've already been prosecuted. And so breaking that cycle of criminality is something that we've been focused on in the district attorney's office in these past few years. Some of you might be aware, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, our office released a study about how our office handles cases with a specific look at how, whether or not, and in what ways there is implicit or explicit racial bias that exists in how we prosecute cases. The overwhelming number of cases that result in plea agreements, that's how, well over 90% of cases are resolved in Denver criminal courts. There was the researchers who did an in-depth dive of thousands of cases over a year-long period, found that there was not a statistically significant correlation between what your race is and the type of plea disposition that you received. So that was the good news. There were absolutely several areas of concern where there did seem to be some discrepancy or some variance where you were getting benefits based on your race. And what Beth McCann mentioned, or what she said when that study was released, was that this was the start of the process, not the end, and that it's important to remember that gathering data for data's sake doesn't do much. It's important to then act on that information that you have. So that's an ongoing process that our office will be working on. I'm happy to, like I said, answer any questions or listen to any comments you have. I see that there's one already comment or question that I'll try to take a look at in a second. But as I indicated at the beginning, I know these meetings are packed. I am going to put my email address into the chat box. You should always feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns that you have after this. I'm always happy to answer questions, at least to the best of my ability. But with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments that you guys have. And I'm seeing, so what are some, yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
So I feel like you might not, so I'm sorry for asking this question in advance. I took statistics. I'm holding up a textbook from my college. I took statistics in the law, so I'm kind of excited about what you're talking about. But what my passion area, like I like to talk to the people that I work with. I'm a biostatistician. I work with clinical investigators, and I just gave a talk last month about being cautious when interpreting results from a study when you set out to find a difference and then you failed to find one. So there are studies that pharmaceutical companies do to say these drugs are equivalent. And so designing a study to prove equivalence has like a specific design, and you have to have a large number. So that your study of 1,000 cases or thousands of however, I don't know, I didn't quite catch the sample size, didn't find a significant difference shouldn't be the bottom line when you're describing its results. So with a non-significant test, you still got a confidence interval around whatever parameter you were estimating. And it could be the case that that confidence interval includes values that are meaningful and harmful in one direction or the other. So the failure to find a statistically significant difference in a study does not necessarily get you off the hook. I'm sorry.
And
So in the form of a question, I'd like to see that report. Can you give it to me?
yeah, no, absolutely. I'm happy to pass the report along. I wouldn't dare go toe to toe with you on statistics because about half the words you just used, I don't even pretend to understand. And I apologize if I gave the impression that we were celebrating the report and saying, hey guys, our office doesn't have any sort of issues with race and how we prosecute that. That wasn't my intention, and that's certainly not Beth's position. To be clear, and as I said, this is the start of the process, right? And I think that when it comes to some of the stuff that you brought up, it requires a deeper dive and a more specific look at a more in-depth, it requires a more in-depth level of analysis, right? And it was something that was in fact planned on but curtailed by COVID. There was going to be several researchers from the University of Denver and some of their research assistants coming into the office multiple days a week to comb through data in a much with a much finer tooth comb to try to paint a more complete picture than, as you indicated, what is kind of a first gloss. I apologize if I gave the impression that I was saying we were off the hook and that we are not responsible for our role in the system. That was not my intention, and it's certainly not Beth McCann's position. We all view this as an ongoing process that requires additional study.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that don't involve the interpretation of a null study? I don't think we should focus on that any longer.
I see one from Carol Hunter. She wants to know some examples of specific actions support that you offer or suggest break the cycle of criminality. So one of the programs that we have now that I believe is about a year old now is a diversion program whereby people can enter a program for certain types of crimes after it's been investigated by the police department and submitted to our office. And instead of having the charges formally filed against them and them going through the usual criminal process of appearing in front of a judge, getting an attorney, pleading guilty or not guilty, and everything else that comes along with that, there is a diversionary program whereby they have the option before charges are formally filed to work with community members up to and including the victim of their crime to come up with alternate solutions to the traditional either probation or community corrections or incarceration. It's something where the victims always have to have buy-in. We're not going to force victims to sit down with the perpetrators of whatever crime it was, unless they're comfortable with it. But we have found that when some of these individuals sit down with the victims of their crime and they hear, not from a judge, not from a prosecutor, not from a police officer, but from the victim themselves, the impact that that crime had had on the person and on the community generally, that has a very powerful effect in terms of deterrence for future crime. So that's one of the new initiatives that we have in our office. We have a fairly robust juvenile program where, juvenile, anyone who's not yet 18, we will again work with case officers, with parents, with schools, with other community resources to try to craft solutions to whatever their needs are given their particular circumstance. So those are two of the examples. I will also post in the chat a link to a newsletter that I think it goes out every 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Don't hold me to that, but we'll update you. It's from Beth McCann, and will shine a little bit more light for you on kind of updates in the office and new things that we're doing, and some of those programs that I mentioned. Other questions or comments?
Are there, oh, Jeff, go ahead.
I had the same question as Carol, but want to say thank you for coming. I think it's important that the community gets to hear from your office, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Yep.
I had a question for you, Mr. Hoffman. I am a proud student at the University of Denver, and I know the professor who wrote that report you were talking about. I'm curious from a statistical standpoint, maybe you can't answer this question, but is there more research planned to provide a better sample of that data to better understand? You said the researchers couldn't get in to look at some of that data because of the pandemic. I wonder if there's like follow-up research plans so that we can get a bigger picture to that, and if that type of work is occurring.
Yes, the bottom line is yes, there will be other research done. I think some of it will revolve around doing a deeper dive into an analysis of those multi-thousand cases that were looked at. There were two areas of concern where there was a difference, kind of a fairly clear difference in terms of resolutions based on race. That was people who received deferred judgments, which are you essentially plead guilty to something, that guilty pleas put on hold for, say, a period of 2 years. You don't commit any new offenses in that 2-year period. You'll withdraw the guilty plea. You'll be able to keep that off of your criminal record. What we saw was that African American and Hispanic defendants were less likely to get the benefit of those plea dispositions than white defendants. And then as it relates to individuals who were enrolled in our drug treatment court, that was also an area where you did see a larger percentage discrepancy based on race. So I think as a general matter, looking at the overall data is something that we'll be doing, but then also doing a deeper dive and analysis into those two areas of concerns to try to address or figure out exactly what the issues producing those results are, and then simply figuring out what the problem is doesn't do much if you don't also work on the plans for how to curb it. So yes, that's a very long-winded answer to a question.
Thank you.
And I'll also post in the chat as well the report that Amanda can take a look at and pick apart even further.
Are there areas where you'd want community involvement or volunteers? Maybe is that an opportunity that exists through your office?
So yes, there are several opportunities. They should, I believe, get mentioned in the newsletter. I do know that there are several community councils that, sit down with the district attorney. I don't know how frequently, but there are options for giving more direct input to her. And I'll make sure that any other information that I can dig up on other similar opportunities, I will pass on to you, Amanda, which you can then disseminate to the group. Okay, if there aren't any other questions or comments, I will, like I said, post all of that information in the chat. It will include my email. So do not hesitate to reach out with any questions or comments. And thank you guys again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here with us today. I'm glad that that's an initiative that the DA's office is taking to get out into community meetings, because it's quite hard to be an involved citizen all the way out here with so much of it going on downtown. So thanks for coming out and being in the community.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
So that leaves us with a little bit of time at the end of the meeting tonight. We had talked about having small committee updates during this hour. And so I will put the offer out to all of our committees. Is there anyone with a prepared small update who could launch into a minute or two of talking, or just say when your next meeting is?
I feel like I should say something that Brad needs to say something about. Take it away, Brad, about Safe Streets, because he's just become our recruiter for the Safe Streets Committee. And I appreciate that. So we've had about 4 or 5 folks who are now going to commit to working with us, who are not on the board, but who are very interested in this area. So I'm compiling names now and communicating with them about some of our goals, purpose, and all that kind of thing. And so thank you, Brad. Appreciate that.
It helps to have a good product, Carol. So thank you for that.
Mutual Admiration Society here. Okay, and Jade, if you're on, do you want to say something about our newest member for the Education Committee?
I sure can, Carol. I apologize. I was excitedly picking up my mom from the airport and her flight was delayed. I haven't seen her in 20 months. So I've been en route, but we have a wonderful addition to our Education Committee. Her name is Aiden, and she'll be joining our monthly Education Committee meetings. And as she's able, she will be joining our board meetings as well, just to listen in. But her primary role will be serving and supporting the Education Committee.
And why is she so special, Jay?
Well, I left it to school administrators to determine who would be the most special. And what her background is really positioned for leading community change is one of her most exciting things that she wants to participate in. And she's very passionate about the work that we've done in renaming the community, and was part of the DSST community that was very active in studying the history of the community and neighborhood.
Thanks.
We also wanted to bring up to the board the opportunity of possibly having a student member. So just to keep that file away in the back of your mind, and we can discuss that at a later date and time.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think we're open to having a community, a member who is a student. It would just not, that person would just not be allowed to be a voting member, because you would have to be an adult to vote. So we can talk more about that, but by all means. Any other committees? I'm going to put sustainability on the spot.
Amanda, I wanted to give a brief little update on the Health and Safety Committee. Just got some great information from the police department. But as we try to reframe, we want to focus on more than just crime, because a safe community is more than a community without crime, right? So we've been diving into health lately, specifically behavioral health, and how we can meet the needs of our behavioral health needs here in the community. And in the future, we look forward to working with our partners at the city to expand the capabilities of that crisis intervention, the behavioral health responses here in the neighborhood, so that we make sure the right type of providers are responding to those calls, and we can meet the needs of all of our community members. So that's what we've been working on, and we are very excited about that work.
That's great. Jack, do you have an update on a program that was piloted downtown where you would call dispatch, like normal dispatch, like 911, I guess, and then they would send like a behavioral health specialist in specific situations?
Sure, that was called STAR, support. So what is it? Support Team Aided Response is I think what that stands for. And that was a group that was a combination of Denver Health and the Mental Health Center of Denver that put a licensed clinical social worker and a paramedic, and they would, the police would send, some 911 calls would get diverted to them, and those behavioral health experts, specialists would be able to respond to those types of calls. That was quite successful last year when it launched. We are very interested in including it out here in District 5. Right now, it's only doing work in District 6, which is the downtown portion of the city, but we would love to see it expanded out here to District 5. And we will be working with folks at the city, perhaps even the folks at DPD, all those engaged stakeholders to see if we can bring that higher level of higher standard of care out here to the Central Park area so that we can ensure that we meet the needs of all of our community members.
Great. So just a couple minutes left. Sustainability. I know it's been a hard time with things sort of being put on hiatus, but is there anything Earth Day related that we should know about?
Sure. As you alluded to, our programming has been on pause in the interest of public health, but we are excited about some stuff that we have coming up this summer, and we look forward to sharing more on that soon. One thing that I do want to request of the group is that we know that there's a lot of dedicated sustainability enthusiasts in the Central Park neighborhood, and if you are aware of any or participate in any groups, gardening groups, cleanup groups, anything like that, we want to know about those groups so that we can spotlight your good work and find ways to connect what our committee does with yours. So please do share those. A good example of one that we've worked with in the past is the Westerly Creek Elementary Green Team. They're a fantastic group of dedicated parents and residents who are working on all kinds of great sustainability projects in their school community.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Diversity and inclusivity, Mandel.
Yeah, so we really don't have much to update. We are planning on doing a community poll just to kind of figure out where some things are. We've developed a questionnaire around that, and we'll be probably using SurveyMonkey for that. We were anticipating using the new web platform, but it doesn't support the questionnaire platform that we're looking for. So that is pretty much the probably the most information I have. We have a meeting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. that's scheduled. If you look online, you'll find a link to that Zoom meeting underneath the, I think it's under events. Yeah, it's under
events, yeah.
That's all I have.
Great, thank you. And then communication, I think that's it. Yes, is there an update from the communications committee?
I am unprepared with providing an update at this moment. I'm sorry. I cannot quite fill the time for you today.
I know I can fill the time. So the communications committee has had to postpone a board training for using our new website for several months now, but we will get that scheduled soon so that we can all be more active members in getting information out to the community through our website. So board members, please watch for that. And that is,
well,
yeah.
I was going to do actually committee specific trainings rather than a whole board one, if that's okay. So I started scheduling those or reaching out to the committees that have expressed interest in those.
Okay.
Schedules individually, because I don't know that all board members need to sit through all of it.
Well, then I'm happy to have heard that update because I was unaware of it. So thank you, Jeff. Mark.
Okay.
All right. Okay, guys, that's the end of, yeah.
Amanda, you got good odds with calling anybody.
We should,
Jeff,
I don't want to put Jeff on the spot, but Jeff, do we want to give a fundraising update or not? Just ask.
I'm not real familiar with where we're at, just because of my connection to CPBA as well. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I can give an update there, actually. So I can give an update on that one. We are opening up the opportunity for a couple sponsorships that are tied in with CPBA members as a recognition of their early support of our switch to our new platform, Nation Builder. So any CPBA members this year can submit if they're interested in sponsoring some of our one of our emails. We're going to switch to 2 a month. One of them, the second one each month, will have. We started adding thank yous to our sponsors there, and between now and May 1st, anybody who submits any CPBA members that submit information can be considered for whichever month of the remaining of the year that they want to. It's, I believe, $250 to get into that, what we call Prime View sponsor area in our emails that go to the community. And if you have any information about that, put something in the chat or text me or contact me, because we have a few businesses that have already signed up for that, but we still have plenty of spots available.
And just to spell out that acronym, CPBA stands for the Central Park Business Association, and that's a separate organization. They meet on the mornings of the third Tuesday each month. They're currently meeting virtually right now. And so that's just a support organization for all of the small businesses, or maybe larger businesses that are in and around the community. Okay, so now we've run long. But Brian pointed out in the chat to me that we need to plug next month's community forum. So 2 hours, slightly different format from today, but really full of information. We'll have development updates from Brookfield. We'll have 3 representatives from different facets of DPS, and we've submitted a list of questions to them already that they're allocating who's going to answer those questions, and we'll have breaks for Q&A after each speaker. So those we have the agenda pretty much set for that, and I'll talk about it during the next hour. So please join us next month. It's not the usual monthly meeting, it's that different format for the annual forum, but it's still going to be virtual. And thank you all for being here. I will pause for a moment between this hour and the next meeting, which will start in just a second. Okay, now I'm going to keep going. Just like 4 people logged off. Okay, so that I don't run long in the next hour. So our agenda is to go in depth on talking about the agenda for the annual forum in May, which just flows quite nicely from where we were just talking. Mark wanted to talk about having a communication plan for reactive community emails to ensure that we're getting forward input in a timely manner. And then the major item that we need to spend most of our time talking about is following up from our strategic planning session from last month. So is there anything? There's a real agenda. I should probably look at that. Hang on. I should start by saying, do we need to approve the meeting minutes from last month, which don't exist because the meetings are recorded? Are there any modifications to the agenda that I just proposed? Does it sound like we should be doing anything else? Okay. And so I'm not prepared to talk about the agenda for the May meeting. Let me just bring that up on my screen, and then I'll share my screen. Sorry, it'll just take me a second to do this. Brian, do I have permission to share my screen?
You're a co-host, so you should.
All right, and so then it's just on me finding the thing. Okay, agenda. Here we go. That wasn't too bad. Share screen. 3. Okay. So this is arguably a very full agenda, although we had a dry run with Jim Chrisman, and so I'm pretty confident that he can get through that. I guess juggling between he and Tyler know that they have 30 minutes to share. so the three speakers from education are, are Jen Bacon, Liz Mendez, and oh, that should say Liz Mendez. And then the zone leader for this region, well, anyway, is Vernon Jones. So those are the three people from education. Liz is coordinating between all three of them with our list of questions sorry, this is a bold thing for me to remember to make sure that I send it to them, but I had sent them multiple emails in the same day and I didn't want to send another one. So this is the list of education questions that they are going to be, I'll just put this in the chat so that you can review it at your leisure. But if you can think of other questions that we should be sending people in advance, I mean, so the people at Brookfield and Evergreen are just going to talk about the developments that they have coming online, with Brookfield also now needing to talk about the 500 units that they're proposing. I don't have any specific questions in mind that we've sent the MCA, the Central Park Business Association, or Councilman Herndon's office. Sorry for all of the shorthand that's been part of this, part of the
Amanda,
the
you're not sharing, by the way.
What? I'm not. My screen?
No.
Oh, you're right, I'm not. I had to click share. Well, now it's sharing. Do you see it now? My little mouse moving around?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for telling me that I was not doing that correctly. One more time. So the three speakers that we have for education are Jen Bacon, Liz Mendez, and Vernon Jones. Liz Mendez is coordinating the time between the three of them, planning a Q&A at the end of everyone talking for about the first 20 minutes. And then similarly for the development updates, Jim Chrisman and Tyler are in communication, and they know that between the two of them, they have about 15 to 20 minutes to talk with, to leave about 10 or so minutes left for Q&A. And then we just have time for brief, well, you know, our bit at the beginning is required. We have to do our election, but hopefully that can go pretty quickly and smoothly with just like a slide sort of introducing it. And then I've been in contact with Kevin, with Lieutenant Hines, that next month would have to be like a little bit shorter than sometimes when we have like a longer amount of time to spend with DPD during our monthly meetings. The MCA is always lightning fast. And then I don't expect the Central Park Business Association to be very verbose either. And then Councilman Herndon has already responded that he's okay also having just like a short time on the floor, but I thought it was important for him to be there. I've not sent any questions to any of these people. I've only sent questions to the education group, and then those questions are here, which now you can see, but I've also put them in the chat. And then the bolding here is again, just because I haven't sent that question to them, and I want to be sure that I remember to do that. Not that it's like an alarming question or anything.
So Amanda, can you page up there again?
Yeah.
Please? So just a couple of things. So under Brookfield, apartment project and filing 54, which one is 54?
Oh, that's the one that you know about. It's
Or is that 51, isn't it?
Oh,
Isn't
should be 51. Yep.
That's 51. So
I've called it 54 on a number of occasions. Thanks.
And are they directly involved there anymore?
I think that I might have bulleted that before I talked to Jim. He might not. I can ask him to say if they do have any further role.
If you're going to provide,
yeah,
so sorry to talk over you like that, but if you're going to provide some questions to these folks,
yeah,
I think that's appropriate for Jim to speak to that. And what I would ask there is not so much to speak to the development of that, because we have other developers involved, but I think it would be good if Jim could give a 2 or 3 minute overview of how that site got to where it is today. That was a commercial site that it was approved to go to this particular site, that was kind of a negotiated deal, that it is what it is today, kind of that flavor to it. Because I think that still is a kind of a question mark in a lot of people's minds as to a 5-story apartment complex on that corner.
I think
And-
it was originally zoned CMU 20,
Right.
not RMX 5, and now that it's
Right.
RMX 5, so it's limited in height further
Well-
now than it was previously.
Well, a lot of the neighbors over there continue to say that they were given the ultimatum of a gas station, easy shop car facility next to them, or an apartment complex. And
Gleason literally said that to
Yeah.
one of their people in a ZAP meeting, and I was
right,
sitting
and
there.
so I think if Jim can provide some light to that at least provides foundational facts to what occurred, I think that would be good for Area 51. And then Evergreen, those are the sites across from Chiba Hut. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, this shouldn't say Sprouts. I've made
That
these
should say
changes. I don't know if I'm
natural
looking at the
gro-
wrong.
it's-
Yeah,
Natural Grocers, I think, right?
I have 2 different drafts of this draft agenda. Yep, I feel like I've made that correction already. 2
Yeah.
large projects near I-70. One's north of I-70 and one's south, and they're labeled like runway north and runway south.
Okay. And the runway north is the one that's under construct. Well, both of them, I guess, are under construction right now. So, okay. And then the other one that we get a lot of questions about, obviously, is the area by Sprouts. So you had Sprouts listed, but the area by Sprouts by the Central Park Station and the TOD, and what the schedule is on that. He may not be able to speak to the apartment developer.
Yeah. So I had in our pre-meeting, I'm going to do this on a different screen, but so those are things that Jim is planning to talk about. He does have the TOD on his list of things
Okay.
to update us about. Oh, here we go. Sorry.
And then the one other thing is you're thinking through your stuff there is with regard to the 500 apartments.
Mhm.
There were a dozen or more kind of questions and comments generated, at least in the email strings I had seen. Now that might have been part of our Safe Streets Committee group that was sending stuff back and forth. Brad had a lot of information on that and that kind of thing. But whether you were copied on those or we need to forward them to you or not, but I think there's a fair amount of dialogue and questions about. I know Gina had some questions or comments with regard to placement near the off ramp and how that all would function there. And so I know that's very early in their process, but they're asking for a zoning variance over there, what the process is and what the ability is to provide input on that, I think is a key and critical item to them gaining support or providing clarity to the project. So
Yeah, and I've asked a couple of times for an opportunity to get clarification on these things, and the response from Brookfield was, give us the support to get the units, and once we know we can do it, we'll talk about how it'll happen.
yeah, and unfortunately, that's not a very neighborly kind of way to approach it. So
No.
if they want support, we need to know what it is up front, and that's.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah. So I would, in fact, I think the position would be that we can't support it unless we know what the details are. So.
Yeah, I would even
Amanda,
argue we would
haven't-
oppose it, but we
we
have to
haven't
talk about that.
gotten- We have not gotten the application for the zoning variance yet from the city. That
Yeah.
would be, so that means that they probably haven't even filed it yet.
I
But
think they want our letter of support to be part of that filing.
and I
Yeah,
would say.
that's what Jim said.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the thing so I don't know when, I guess, so either I don't know that there's a way to submit a letter of opposition while they're filing, or if that we have to just wait for it to come back for approval. But given, I don't know.
Opposition or support. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do either unless you know what the details are. So.
Right.
Not gonna
Um,
give you either unless we know what the details are. So, and that might take us a whole entire separate meeting in my
Yeah,
mind.
okay. And I shouldn't keep saying opposed because we don't have enough information to have a board, and we don't have.
I
a board
think
meeting
it's
on
a valid use of the property. I mean, office complexes have fallen, with the pandemic, what was originally proposed there is probably not the highest and best use, but I also don't know that 500 ground level apartments is the best, or ground level units is the best use either. I mean, this is an area that has some tremendous potential for multi-story density and that kind of thing. And it's kind of like what they did over here by the TOD. I don't think they're maximizing the benefit of the areas personally, and my background in land planning, but they're the ones who cut the final deals, I guess. So.
Yeah, that's, we'll need to.
Amanda, one other just comment, just more broadly about this area is could we ask maybe the participants, to the extent they can provide it, with some sort of like briefing packet, or at least like diagrams, because this is going to be a lot of like complex topics to hit in a short amount of time, and to the extent people are paying attention and want to be really engaged.
Yeah, they usually, you mean during the forum?
During and even before, if it's like people want to see the agenda, plus like here's the diagram of what Brookfield is proposing, something like that.
Yeah, so I have the bulleted list from Jim of what he's going to cover, and so I could ask him to prepare his own slides. How about that? With a
no extra
picture
work
on
for you.
one of them. So I could prepare his slides. I could ask him to just to do one slide for each of those areas that he's going to be covering. That's probably a reasonable thing to ask, rather than having like one map where it's like, now my cursor
he goes over it for
area.
10 seconds. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No. This is like when you submit to a council or a planning board, and they've got the agenda, and then each item has supporting documentation that goes along with it. I mean,
okay.
It would be my thing. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I've made a note to myself to go back to ask Jim to make a slide for each of his sections, and then same thing for, I feel like Tyler will do it already, but
yeah. And Amanda, we should make sure we have, you've got the names, but I'll sign on early, and as people, I'll give them presentation rights and everything, so you don't have to worry about that. So.
Yeah, that'll be tricky though, because I've told these people, the agenda starts with like one set of topics, and then the development updates come a little later, and then education comes a little later. And so some people might not be logging in, that some of the presenters wouldn't be, but you'll be looking for them. Yeah, okay.
I'll make a list and watch for them.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to move on to item number. So the biggest thing I wanted to ask is that, and I'm glad that I got your feedback to ask for the visuals, Brad. That's very helpful. Thank you. Is if you can think of other questions that we should send people to make sure that they incorporate into their prepared comments. Let's be sure to do that. Okay, so item number 2 on our agenda for tonight. I've lost it. Oh, Mark, and the communication, like doing business over email, not so that it's not in a public. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to talk about it later, and we can move on to the?
I think it fits with the other agenda, because it's sort of like how we're doing business and whatnot. I think it fits under some of those subcategories of that discussion.
Oh, good point. Okay, so then let's do it all together, and I'll put both of those on my screen side by side very quickly, and then we'll dive into that. Okay. Okay, actually, I guess it's just one thing that I'll have on my screen. Oops. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to share again. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the thing that that I sent around yesterday, and just to say it again, Steve sent it to me in March, and I was on spring break, and it took me a while to connect to him, and I apologize. So we set out for the role in the community to address what are we as a board uniquely positioned to do, and how do we differentiate ourselves? And we came back with 4 items that are here. And then when I talked to Steve, he thought that these were areas where we needed further discussion. So on the how do we keep ourselves accountable, both as a board and as committees? His suggestion for how we should keep talking about this was to keep talking about it, to either have an ad hoc, like a series of like ad hoc committees. So there's always like two or three people like kind of actively thinking about it, and they'd like go away for like a month or 2 months and come back and like say something and then like pass it to another set of 2 or 3 people, and they'd go away and think about it and come back. So that there was either a small group always thinking about it, or we would have some time during each board meeting agenda to talk about accountability, rather than like spending in another session, really diving into it. So that was where we still had work to do, and those were some ways that he suggested we should do it. But I'll just read the main bullet points here. So what do we as a board uniquely do, and how do we differentiate ourselves so we're a voice and a conduit between the city and residents of our neighborhood? We encourage, enable, and oversee the success of the committees in addressing the culture issues and concerns and opportunities, challenges, and successes of our community. We attend to the culture of our community, and we are the decision-making body for CPUN. Does that seem like it captures what you remember from our discussion last month about our role in the community? Trying to make this box bigger so I can see everyone's faces at the same time. There we go. Okay. I can see all of you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned this over email, Amanda. I don't disagree, but limiting it to the city doesn't feel quite right. The city is obviously an important stakeholder, but not necessarily the only one that we're responsible for being a conduit to.
Oh yeah, especially like education is another one I can like immediately think, what other entities would you lump in with like those like external groups?
Yeah, I'd hate to try to create a list of them because you're bound to leave. I wonder if it's more a matter of describing them in general, like stakeholders or institutions or some other word that captures what I think the point of this bullet is.
Yeah, I don't think you should just limit it to external either, Amanda, because it could be internal stakeholders. I like the word stakeholders, but yeah.
Are they our stakeholders or are we their stakeholders?
Well, I think, yeah. And I don't know that it's community, because like we're facilitating between corporate entities and that kind of thing, and our residents here in the next meeting and that kind of thing. So stakeholders or some form of that word.
What about just outside entities? I don't think I mean, stakeholders to me, I don't quite know.
Yeah.
What we mean.
All right, so we'll keep chewing on that one.
That's something we can do with our orange plan, right?
Yeah.
Participating entities. I don't know.
Relevant
entity.
I think the point is that they're well, okay. We're saying they're outside and inside the community?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I
personally, I'm fine with a liaison between the community and internal and external stakeholders, something like that.
Okay.
I don't get the word stakeholder. I have to be honest. I don't see what stakeholder is like a specific thing. I mean, this could be someone coming to us asking us for something. It could be anything, it seems.
Can be very broad. All right.
So when I looked at all of these points, and I have nothing to say about the language with stakeholders and whatever, we'll figure that out. Facilitating the flow, facilitating the community's ability. And what I wrote down when I was looking at that is how that happens. And so those are the specifics for me, is like, how do we make this happen? Or what's the protocol? How do we facilitate that? And is that happening? Then are we assuming that happens through all of the committees that we have? And for instance, I was just thinking about not just individual committees, but then I was asked as a member of the education committee to attend the diversity and inclusion committee meetings, because it makes sense. There's a overlap there. There's a complementary relationship. And so I'm just thinking about how individual committees work and then how we work together. So that was just something that popped into my head when I looked at the we act, we look, we encourage, how all that happens.
Yeah, I think operationalizing these is like a step beyond what we would write here. But I think just agreeing that this is what we're doing, but how we're doing it is, and those procedures for both us as a board and as committees are separate than just listing what we're doing. But Carol, do you feel like this is a good capture of what we're doing and or what we should be doing?
Yes.
Okay.
And Amanda, I think the point was, we have to all be aligned to the what before we can get to the how. And if we diverge from the what, then we'll be all over the place. But if we are all aligned on what we're doing, then doing it will be, how we do it will be easier. That's what I took from Steve.
Man. Okay. All right. So that's A. Does anyone else have anything to add to this first, other than that we need to hammer out this language here? But
I think the sub points, Amanda, will have to change where we say the city.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really the organizations that we work with, or the entities that we work with.
Yeah. Okay. Proactively, reactively create opportunities. Some of these could remain city specifically, but and civic engagement kind of implies city. Okay, all right. So some things to come back to. So the next one, we encourage, enable, and oversee the success of CFUN committees in addressing the culture issues and concerns, opportunities, challenges, and successes of our community. I feel like that could be shorter. Issues, concerns. Not banned. Opportunities, challenges. Maybe challenges is a bit redundant if we've already done issues and concerns.
Is that a sub bullet under the decision-making body of CPUN?
So B is a sub bullet under 1, our role in the community.
It seems like it's part of D. I don't know.
Oh, I see. Oh, I thought you were asking me, but you're suggesting that perhaps.
Well, I'm wondering. I'm just saying. I guess that one I saw is potentially bleeding into either C or D. It's sort of like a culture bullet, and it's sort of like a operations bullet.
Yeah, or that C and D are sub bullets of B, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, if the committees are our main function.
I don't know. Culture of the community is kind of an outside. Okay. All right. So, but the organization here might be shuffled around a bit, but does this as a whole seem to capture, I mean, I see us doing all of these things. We're focused on the community. We do all of these things, indeed. We have a big focus on culture. Indeed, we do strive to build trust and respect. Yeah, being a voice for each member. Or giving a platform for the voice of each member of the community. Then we're the decision-making body for CFUN, sure. And then we're accountable. I agree with all of these things. does anyone have anything, I mean, other than that they could be shuffled around a bit, which I agree with, because some of it feels like it is overlapping and kind of like nested. And I think that there's room to work on that. But does this seem to capture things pretty well for our role in the community?
You know, I'm sitting here thinking about the term culture and how are we defining that?
Well, I have that sheet that you guys sent around. Do you want me to open that up?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're in agreement with the definition of the culture of the community.
Okay, so definitions of the word culture: a system of knowledge, beliefs, patterns of behavior, artifacts, and institutions that are created, learned, shared, and contested by a group of people. Culture encompasses people's entire way of life. Culture is the everyday practices that bring order to our experience and the values and beliefs that support them.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine this would probably kind of evolve because we can't clearly define what all these things are.
All of which things?
Like with the things that make up what the culture is. So those beliefs and all those things.
I thought that the next line actually was a good definition that Jamie provided. After there was additional clarification that said something like, the foundation of culture is the agreed upon rules, structure, values, and principles of a group. And the foundation allows people to interact with each other by understanding boundaries and norms. This part of culture can be quantified. I don't know. I mean, that seems to be more, culture seems to be a shared sort of respect and understanding towards each other, space provided to each other that's that definitely has some common norms attached. You know, at least that's how I kind of see it. It's sort of a, you know, it's a share, it's something shared.
Yeah, so that's my challenge is, you know, you got the common norms, but what are we defining our culture to be so that when we're looking at, you know, how we're addressing or supporting the culture, we have an idea of what exactly that is. And I don't know, maybe that's just where I was kind of wondering, you know, where there might be some challenges with that.
Yeah, so I guess we as an organization can communicate with the community and we can offer specific events, but each person in the community is going to receive that and then live in the community in a way that's different from each one of us. So there's, you know, there's what we hope to, how we hope to influence the culture of the community, but then there's what is actually lived. So, you know, there's our efforts to impact the culture, and then there's like what the culture is outside of the context of the work of CPUM that not everyone has even heard of. So certainly the community culture won't be moved strictly by the meetings that we host monthly, but I think it's still fair to say that our actions are an effort to influence the culture, even if we're not in control over the culture.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, me too.
Can someone say that more concisely? But so that the Mandel's comment was in the context of the use of the word culture here. So yeah,
well,
so
you're saying like it's proactive and reactive. We're both proactive and reactive in our response to the culture.
Yeah. Where well, we said proactive and reactive up here. We didn't say it down here, but yeah. So we do these things to like influence the culture, and we attend to the culture of our community. So culture, I guess culture maybe doesn't need to be in both of these places, and we could have a section that's more intentional about how we see ourselves in the culture of the community. I'll highlight the word culture and note that it could require maybe.
Yeah, I think
footnote
really
at least
in
at a
B,
minimum.
I think you should remove it from B.
Okay,
Yeah, because we
I
got
think I agree with you.
issues, concerns, and opportunities.
So, but then I think that these things are still accurate. So we're, well, but we can still, and we can think more.
I think if you define culture like Mandel says, I think the others will work under that. I don't know if we need to, you know, I don't think this has to be a, you know, massively larger bullet. I just think I agree with Mandel. We should try to define it a bit.
So can I just take Jamie's language here, the agreed upon rules, structure, values, and principles of and then can I change that group to community?
I think it's above in 3.2, maybe. It's like culture's everyday practices that bring more, well, I mean, sometimes culture can sound a little constraining, and I'm not sure that that's accurate necessarily. I think there are norms and values and all that kind of stuff. I just think we need to say it in a way that, you know, we're celebrating our culture, you know, not just, and we are trying to influence it. We are supporting it, but at the same time.
Okay, I'm just going to leave these on the side of that comment over there. Okay, and then that can be expanded a bit. All right. I think that deleting it from B was good to do as well, though. All right, and we are the decision-making body for CPUN. I mean, everyone's a member of CPUN in the community if they live or own here, and they're an adult. In this capacity, we're accountable to the whole community. Yeah. Okay, and then the accountability stuff there. Okay, I'm gonna move on to 2. Is that okay? Okay, number 3 is gonna go really quickly. Let's just do 3 so we can feel like we've eaten some candy and we keep going. Guidelines and expectations for board members. What are the expectations of board members and committees? So just just kind of some guidelines, being honest and being engaged and respectful, responding to emails, showing up, and then not being reactive to social media. That one, I think that one doesn't really need a lot. Did we miss anything there?
I think it's good.
Okay, I'm going to declare that we've knocked out 3. So now we're on number 2, but really we're at the halfway point, you guys. We're doing good on time. Okay, existing committees and our commitment to encourage, enable, and oversee the success of CPUN committees. We ask, how does or should the board work with and interact with our committees? This one's complicated. So we want our committees to be agile and innovative. I think it was Jeff Horsfall who noted that that's where we see the agility coming from CPUN, from the committee level. And then the board and each committee will work together to develop a vision, a set of committee goals, responsibilities, tasks, outcomes, and accountability. So this isn't currently happening, that the board and committees are like working together. So some of the committees have sent some draft document. Well, I'll keep moving. Committees will have a regular reporting and interaction time with the board. It's great that we had quick updates today. That was great, you guys. Where we can address trust and communication between the board and committees. Okay, the board and committees will work together to recruit committee members. So
where did the point under C come from? And I apologize, I wasn't able to be here last month.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand what that means.
I think that was that's just getting at where the information, how the information gets from committees back to the board. I don't know that trust needs to be highlighted. I don't think that trust needs to be highlighted there. I think just communication, and that's not redundant, regular reporting and interaction, so that there's communication flowing to and from. I mean, certainly I would hope that there would be trust on both ends.
Yeah, I just didn't know there was this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I don't know for sure, but what that brings to mind is the idea that if a committee says we want to do this, does the board defer to the committee or overrule it on some other grounds? That was a scenario where I could imagine a question of trust would come up.
Oh, that's totally, I'm sure that must have been the conversation. And so that I think that, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that was exactly it.
Okay.
That doesn't seem like trust. That seems more like kind of hierarchy or authority or something like that.
Like who has the final say in things. And I think that last month when we were discussing this, the discussion sort of went to that it would just be a case by case basis. Like there's not a line where it's like you can do this and you can't do that. And that's always the case. It's just like, well, if it's a gray area, just bring it to the board and we'll talk about it. Is that what everyone else remembers?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're gonna leave it. I mean, this is a strategic plan kind of thing. So we can leave things, I guess, a little gray. Is that what we're saying?
This is supposed to be a strategic plan.
Right. Well, no, and it is, but I'm just, when I see the word trust, I don't think of what, Jeff said. Personally.
Okay. What word would you use instead? Final decision making?
To me, it seems like coordination. It's like, if things should be done in partnership or coordination or something like that. Trust is like, we don't want, to me, it's like, what happens if a committee goes rogue or something?
Okay. But coordination is also important just because we're all working with the same resources. So I think that's important to add as well.
I agree with Jeff Barron about the word coordinating. I think it's a good one.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it its own, not just a slash, and then another Oxford comma. All right. I thank you both Jeff Horsfall and Mandel for filling in the history of the inclusion of the word trust there. I just deleted it as a sub bullet point because it seemed like it's just the flow of the same thing. So report at the meetings so that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and then that'll help everyone stay informed and hopefully improve coordination and trust between the committees and the board.
Amanda, I just would be remiss if I didn't say I think it's incredibly important that we carve out time in each board meeting for the committees to provide an update. I think
we are supposed to have time in each board meeting for committee updates. We didn't do it last month because we gave up last month and the month before. We gave up our normal meeting for the discussion that created this document. But beyond that, there are always supposed to be committee updates during our board meetings. We've also, Carol's emails yesterday or today or last week, we're getting at how we can change the, I think it worked out perfectly today where we had a little bit of time left over and committees happened to have a little bit to say each. And so it was included in the outreach hour. But Carol's point was, how can we bring more of the committee work into the first hour? And so some ways to do that are like, keeping our fingers crossed that we have like 6 minutes at the end of every board meeting and each committee can do a 30-second report, or having each committee do like a slightly longer discussion and followed by a related highlighted speaker for that meeting would be another way to do it, for a little more of an in-depth dive into work that committee is doing. We've had some emails about having someone from DIA come out and talk to us. I'm not sure which committee that would fit well with if we were going to sort of do it in that format where like a committee is being featured followed by a featured speaker. I don't know that DIA really fits into the flow of our committee structure. I don't know. Safe Streets doesn't seem to fit since they're in the sky. Yes, Jeff.
I'm sorry. I think ideally it would be nice if there was also time for board members to ask questions of the committees after their presentations, just so clarification questions or things like that.
Yes, and I should have a standard meeting agenda at my fingertips to show you, and I think that I do. I feel like it's on my calendar, so I'm just going to look for that, and then that will help the discussion that we're having currently, because
I just know it's important that.
And Amanda, over the years, we've gone back and forth. And one of the things that has happened and hasn't happened is, having prepared reports sent out to the board in advance, and then just, any questions, comments, or concerns versus just having time for people to give updates.
So I'm going to put this in the chat to remove my family's calendar from the screen. Where's the chat? Oh, shoot. Oh, I can't find it. I have too many screens, you guys.
I just know we talked a lot about collaboration and whatnot. I think, we don't want to be each committee operating in a bubble. So I think it's important when we are all in the same place that there be time dedicated to that.
I'm just going to put it here. I can't find the chat, and so I'm just going to bullet these things out, and I don't know why so this is the flow of a standard monthly meeting. So approving the minutes from last month. So this is the start of the board meeting right here. Approve the minutes, neighborhood concerns, committee reports, other business, upcoming communication needs. That seems very specific, so maybe this is in general, but so this is kind of just the standard flow. So in a typical month, which we have not had for the past 2 months and we won't have next month, there is time for committee reports that should be sitting on the agenda. And we did it briefly today. And I don't know that we would have necessarily had time given that we needed to have this discussion, but we should. So committee reports and follow-up discussion, but I think that's understood.
I think, reflecting on what's it been 3.5, 4 years that I've been on the board, the committees are far more active and vibrant and important than previously. And so, I know with the communications committee and the subcommittee of the fundraising committee, I feel like there's a lot more I'd like to bring to the board or get the board's feedback on. Obviously there's not necessarily that time, but some sort of way to do that. And so I do like the idea of submitting, very brief written reports ahead of time. So that if there are questions or something that the board members want to address, we kind of put information out there, and certainly we can get feedback. I think that the question is, though, sometimes that might end up requiring a much longer conversation, which is going to be hard to predict, I think, at times. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but I definitely want to acknowledge that we probably need to do it different than we've been doing it, at least earlier in my tenure, so that we can certainly optimize the vibrancy that's present on the committees now.
Yeah, I don't see it written here. Oh, this is what I was going to talk about. Should we view the committees as mechanisms? This is a question from Steve. Should we view the committees as mechanisms of bringing more people onto CPUN, and our committees set up for this? I mean, everyone's a member of CPUN. Maybe he meant like future board members. So, I mean, I guess just using committees.
I think that might relate to the people we have like volunteering, essentially active members as opposed to passive members. because we've definitely been seeing a more of an uptick of people expressing interest since we have a volunteer page now of a few people signing up to be volunteers. And we need to figure out what's our mechanism for putting them to work and not just ignoring them essentially.
Yeah. All right. And how can we automate the putting them to work? I mean, that came down to when I was managing the Block Captain Network, 5+, 6 or 7 years ago. Anytime a block captain came on or resigned, it was a conversation. And as the community grew, that wasn't really scalable. And so if there's a way to automate when someone comes in and says they want to volunteer, can they get an email saying, well, here's where you can get to our upcoming meetings, like get involved with a committee, like go to find the committee work that best suits your needs and get involved that way, so that they are sent something that's relevant for them, but it's also not an exchange of exchange of emails with everyone who's interested in volunteering, because that's not going to be scalable in this community for this board.
Yes, we can definitely do an automated sort of email reply of some sort of survey saying, how would you like to participate? I'd say there's two concerns I have there. One is we don't have such a volume right now that would equate with what was going on with block captains before, that would necessitate it to be automated. And two, that's a pretty impersonal way to welcome a volunteer in your organization. And may dissuade them all from participating. So I think what I would suggest is maybe filling out a little bit more information on the volunteer sign up page. But we can discuss some of those details in the communications committee if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the main proposal is if we just filter them to the chair of the different subcommittee, that's probably the best, if they're interested.
Yeah, but we need to know which subcommittee that they're interested in, right? So we just need something in advance where they express an interest in something specific.
Right. Oh,
I'm not a mind
generally
reader.
saying, hey, I'm interested in CPUN. I'd like to volunteer, that kind of thing.
And
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And they do that, and we get questions and volunteers, and so we typically I'll reach out and say, how would you like to get involved? But we haven't had that many of them. So
yeah.
Okay. So that was a brief discussion on this point down here. Between now and June. So by the way, June is when we typically have a very internal focused meeting where we won't be having any external speakers. I think we can still probably have our community partners and just limit it to like maybe 15 or 20 minutes with updates from DPD. And then just, from then transition into focusing on committees. So our June meeting will have a very committee focused agenda. And if we can have, I keep saying the word charge, I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to say charge again.
Mission? Is that what you mean? Mission?
The entire document. So Jack has sent one for the health and safety committee.
Right.
There have been others too, and I'm not saying them right now, and I apologize that that's the only one that I can list off the top of my head, when a lot of work was obviously put into creating it. So not every committee has one. And so I guess if you're a committee that doesn't have one, and I don't know which committees have them and don't have them because I can't name which committees have them, I can potentially work with you between now and June to get one written, and we should have all of the committee documents sort of in one key place. And so that can also, obviously, it'll help people determining if they want to volunteer, if they know more about what the committees are doing.
And Amanda,
I like the idea.
Oh, sorry, Mark. I was just going to say, I think that what Jack wrote is a perfect kind of analogy, and I am picking on Jack, but what you need is something that's going to be your committee page that we say, go look at these committee pages, and then you'll know what those committees are. And it's not only it's the mission of the committee, what they're doing, but then there can be updates there too, and information. I mean, we have we have unlimited number of pages. So you can have an update and then you can have a list, you can have a, you know, a list of linked pages. And, you know, if Safe Streets is talking about the screw problem on 35th, you know, you can have a link to information on that and it'll just take you to another page. So, I mean, every committee can have that. It's not hard to do. It's just hard to maintain.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was going to say, I was envisioning that June would be a great regular time for each committee to essentially affirm whatever its purpose is and issue, or either June or honestly using that July work period to then come back in August with a plan for the year. So that includes whatever accountability measures we may or may not want to institute. But that was how I was envisioning we formalize some of this of every year saying, okay, who's going to be on this committee? Okay, next month you guys meet, you figure out your plan for the year and your process, and come back and report back in August, and we go from there.
Okay, so with that having been said, I'm going to table existing committees. There's an offer out if you're a committee that would like help in drafting a document summarizing the work of your committee, please let me know if you'd like to talk about creating that plan between now and June. And then we can get together and talk about that. And then and then we'll focus on committees at our June meeting. So I'm sure that we'll have more to add in terms of like comments about this section. I'm just going to move on from now. And we already skipped 3. So, oh shoot, there's 4 and 5. I thought that, oh man, I thought we had made more progress than that. Okay, communication is an animal in and of itself. How do we ensure effective two-way communication and understanding between the board and our community? Carol started at the top with this one. Like, how are we reaching people? And that remains a question. So striving toward effective two-way communication, understanding between the board and our community. So these are the ways that we talked about: using the MCA's emails, which we don't do very often, using Chris Herndon's monthly newsletters, using our emails, which we do use all of the time. We do not use text messages. I should group these current. And then we don't use text messages or yard signs, or we haven't been doing.
You just do the first one.
Yeah. Okay. And then the front porch is still not back. So we're currently only using email. We have other ideas that we have talked about. If the MCA is doing events, I think
We also use social media.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Good point. And we also have public meetings.
Okay, so.
And our website is also a means of communication as well.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Oh, that makes me feel much better looking at that.
And
yeah.
Back up with the front porch.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again.
They still haven't expanded back into a size that could fit us, because remember, we are getting that space for free, and they need that space for advertising because they are the barest of bare bones right now. I think they've eliminated almost all of their staff. Okay.
Just one quick comment on the front porch thing. So if we had the funding to pay for space, then would we be able to get
I
a
guess
little section?
We could buy an ad, sure, and then we could put whatever we wanted to in that ad, perhaps within reason. Yeah, that's yeah, that's something to think about.
Thanks, Sandra.
And I will kick that over to the fundraising committee to see how we would pay for that. If we would have to, if someone else is paying for our space in the front porch, do we have to put their logo on our thing? The front porch would allow that. They would not allow logos if we were doing an article, but they would allow a logo in the context of an advertisement.
We'll talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah, Amanda, that goes back to one of the things that we'll have to talk about in June is, and Jeff and Mark and I started the conversation about what's the budget look like, what do we have, and what are the requests from the committees. So part of what we have gotten away from over the past couple of years, because we were so focused on the name change, was, you know, what are the committees wanting to spend money on? And so we need to have a budget and an idea of how much that fundraising will let us spend.
I just jump into, thanks for that, Brian. I think that's right on target. Jump into just one thing. I love the front porch. I really want to support them. Print media is pretty inefficient and costs a lot to buy space in, and then we can't measure the impact
So,
very easily.
Jeff,
So
I
are
recommend we
some
table that
concerns.
discussion for later for the committee.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. It is 8:30. I'm going to run over like 3 minutes. 3 minutes is not enough time to talk about representation.
We didn't get over the other thing that I wanted to do, which is, and we can table this till June as well, but that's where I would put in for the part about having what I would call secret email discussions that aren't in the public view.
Oh,
Because it is a counter to our desire or striving toward effective two-way communication if we're having a non-public discussion about an issue.
okay. And for anyone who,
And
let me
not
see.
setting aside time for any kind of, public discussion of it at our next meeting.
Okay, who's on the call right now? I want to clarify what we mean by secret. So Amanda Schultz.
I did quote marks
see
for those who
John.
are just listening to audio.
I don't know who John's iPad is, Officer Jenkins and Lieutenant Hines. So the secret business was like, as we were drafting the community letter that we wrote in response to I'm gonna start crying. The woman who was murdered in our community, followed by the women who were killed in Atlanta, and then the shooting in Boulder. So we handled that over email so that we could be responsive to all of it happening in a short amount of time. But it is in fact business that was handled over email. And so Mark wanted to,
It's one of many times when we've had discussions over email that we should have a discussion about what our policy should be on that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there needs to be a way for us to communicate between board meetings. I mean, it's just there's no way we can handle everything just in a board meeting. So I'm all for transparency, but I think just for operations purposes, we have to have some mechanism, and email just seems to be the one that works.
Right, and I'm saying let's formalize the process of setting aside time at our next meeting and have specific vote thresholds that we need to reach so that we're not having some scenario where somebody proposes something, say on a weekend when half of us are up skiing or go on vacation or whatever on spring break, and we would have dissented, but the vote happened so fast that we didn't even get a chance to see our email in that time. Now that's not in reference to this last case, but we've had lots of things where we start discussing it by email and we just kind of assume it's for board discussion and decision, based on whoever's available at that moment.
I see. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
And I think we have to be better at reporting out at the public meetings that those discussions happened and that there was a vote taken, just to formalize it. So.
Okay, which we did not do this month because this would have in fact been the next month after we released that statement, and I didn't even mention that statement during this month's meeting. Okay, and that was business that was conducted over email. Okay, I apologize for missing.
We just did, Amanda. It's part of the record.
Oh, we're still in the
Good job.
meeting right now. I was thinking it had to have been the first hour. Well, there you go. It's all happened. Great. 5. Yeah, it is a challenge for us to well represent all of the voices in our community if our board is not comprised of people who can wear lots of different hats and shoes. So we talked about the areas of identity for us to focus on recruiting potentially. We did not actively decide that we would recruit specific people. The education committee has had a conversation about specifically recruiting a student to be on the board. So, we would like broader committee involvement as well. Oh, Jay is here. Steve asked me to ask you about this asset map. You said that there was a school that had created one for the community. Is this something that you can circulate? We're not sure what it is, and can we use it?
So to clarify on that, it was work that I did when consulting turnaround schools. We would map assets. So that was actually related to a school not in our neighborhood. But what we basically do is map the different resources that the board would be able to leverage to meet various needs and initiatives. So it might be businesses who've donated before or who've sponsored ads in our newsletter communications. It might be different resources that we can lean on, like we would put Central Park Foundation on there, just people who we can rely on as great partners. And you literally just take a map and drop pins in the locations of places that are nearby who could support the various initiatives that the board is interested in pursuing.
Okay.
Amanda,
Okay.
Amanda.
Yes.
This was something Vernon Jones brought up yesterday in the conversation.
Oh, that's the same thing. Okay.
It sounds like the very same thing to me. And it was a term I had not heard before, but I found very useful. And
maybe it comes out of the education field.
Well, yeah, we have our own little, lingo. But anyway, no, that's something I'm going to pursue with the education committee and actually follow up with him too. So
yeah. So the context that Carol's talking about is it was talking about the board of Vernon, who's the head of this region's innovation zone. Talking about having I guess an asset map for this region where the schools could pull from the community. So you wouldn't necessarily have to be a parent in the school to be a volunteer or a resource for the school. I mentioned yesterday, I've given talks at 2 of the high schools in DPS, and none of them are the ones here. Just talking to students who are interested in careers in healthcare and students who love statistics or who are taking a statistics course, maybe learning that they don't like statistics actually. So anyone can talk to students in DPS, but this is a better way for this zone to better connect with the people who are representing it. So, but that's not something that we have as a board, and we wouldn't necessarily have access to that thing once it's created, and it would be created for different purposes, because that would be for like dealing with students, and we would perhaps need something else. So we can think about creating one for our own needs, but it would not necessarily help with representation. So it might not belong here. It's just something that we could help with just our reach in the community. Okay, I understand what an asset map is now. Thank you. Okay, and then I think, and let me get buy-in from everyone here. We had a lot of discussion last month around the Aurora part of CPUN or a part of Central Park. And what to do with that. And I think that we followed up successfully saying that, we can, here's some language about it. We can partner with organizations outside of the community. We can seek to have a stronger relationship with NANO, which is Northwest Aurora Neighborhood Organization. So that would be the RNO for the Aurora part of Central Park, if those people wanted to roll into an existing RNO. But I think that the agreement was that we would not expand our footprint into Aurora because a good part, not all, but a major part of what we do is interacting with the city. Is that accurate? That we're not pursuing that line of discussion? I see a nod from Carol. Looking for at least one more nod or a thumbs up.
So I didn't, I'm going to say that I wasn't privy to that discussion moving forward with that. So if there was a discussion without my presence, I don't know about that. But
well, Amanda, I specifically remember getting an email from you saying, I understand that, and I don't think we need to talk about it any further. But like yours was one of the few direct communications that I had on the matter.
So maybe it was specific to something. I'm not sure. I have to review it, but
okay.
I think I took that back to our committee and kind of let them know what was going on. And so I don't want to just close the door on that.
Okay, so I will not delete this. I will leave it sitting there. I will also delete. We seem to have somewhat resolved the expansion question around Central Park and Aurora, but that goes away. I'll just leave it as we should more actively pursue inter-community conversations and a stronger relationship with NANO.
I mean, I would say any of the RNOs that are in the ring neighborhoods, but yes, them in particular, especially regarding that issue of the Central Park neighborhood in Aurora that they laid claim to years ago before it was built.
Okay.
And the identity of the community. So, yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
All right, so we've worked through everything in the document. We're not at a stopping point with any of it, but I think that that leaves us set up well for June. We don't have a normal meeting next month, so we're taking a 2-month break to really think about all of this. I wonder where I can, well, you guys have this document, so by all means send more thoughts and we'll connect. We'll be talking more about the existing committees in June, but I want to wrap up tonight because we're 10 minutes long. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add right now?
No, but thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Oh, well, thank you guys, all of you. Okay, so next month is our forum and our election. I can, I'll try to formalize some slides to get some feedback, especially on the election part of it in advance. And so we'll be in touch in any case. But if you have anything else you want to add about the agenda that we were talking about, remember, if you can think of questions to ask presenters, Carol raised whether we should be asking questions of our community partners in advance every month. That's also something that we can start getting in the habit of doing. So those are all things to be thinking about, and I will see you guys in a few weeks, if not sooner.
Take care,
Thanks,
y'all.
everyone.
Thanks,
Right.
everyone.
Amanda.
Thanks.
Thanks
Everyone,
very much.
bye.
Bye.